Hi, this is Stu Tinker from SK Tours in Derry, Maine, and I'm listening to the Stephen King podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest episode of the Stephen King podcast. This is episode 92, and I'm here with my co-host, partner in crime. Hello, Hans. How you doing?
Hello. I am fine.
And as we're recording this, it's getting to the end of August, so summer's almost over, and that means that we're getting closer to some new Stephen King stuff in terms of book later on this year, which is great. And we also have some new shows coming out in the fall, and we're going to be talking about those as well, and of course all the other Stephen King news. So let's take it away.
Welcome. Do not fear the door that lies before you. We will protect you. We are your guides, Hans and Lou, and we will give you the latest in Stephen King news. But before we do so, you must prove yourself worthy. You must open the door and join us in the death room.
Yes, and the first thing is actually the upcoming book, Elevation.
Elevators.
Elevators is something totally different.
That sounds like a sequel to maybe Maximum Overdrive or something.
Elevation. And the good news is that Stephen King himself is going to narrate it. So we know that is going to be good. And Simon & Schuster Audio released that news and posted a short video of King in the recording booth. So that's interesting. We have talked about this earlier, and we both agree that when King reads his own stories, it's usually very good. So looking forward to that.
Absolutely. I love his version of Bag of Bones. It's one of my favorite audiobooks. And I even like when he did the first book or two of the Dark Tower series. I thought were pretty good as well. So looking forward to this Elevation, and it'll be a nice uplifting story, as we've been told.
Yep.
Yes. Alrighty. So up next, there's a book being released from Cemetery Dance about The Stand, which is hard to believe is 40 years ago.
Wow.
And it's called Cemetery Dance, This Dark Chest of Wonders, 40 years of Stephen King's The Stand. And of course, while we're waiting for the latest iteration adaptation of The Stand, which now seems it's going to be a miniseries, Cemetery Dance is decided to release this book. And it says that in September 1978, Stephen King published The Stand. And as we all know, that one has gone on to be probably his most popular book. Anytime there's a poll, The Stand is definitely up there. And this book Andy Burns is telling the story behind Stephen King's enduring opus and delves deep into its various incarnations, the unfilmed George A. Romero adaptation, the 1994 ABC miniseries, the audiobooks, and Marvel Comics adaptations. So included in that are a bunch of exclusive interviews with Bev Vincent, Robin Firth, Mick Garris, James Sheridan, who of course played Randall Flagg, Snuffy Walden, Grover Gardner, Ralph Macchio, Robert Aguero-Sacasa, and Mike Perkins, to name a few. So you're not in this book, are you, Hans?
No, this one I'm not in.
No? Well, it's their loss. So
yeah.
I would love to get this book, but so far it's only being published out of Cemetery Dance. If they ever get distribution with Amazon, I'll definitely snap it up. But unfortunately, shipping costs, again, are just too brutal for ordering these kinds of books directly from the Cemetery Dance. So I don't know, you Hans, are you going to get your hands on a copy of this, you think?
Yes, I think I am.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I just want to clarify that the Ralph Macchio who's mentioned here is not the Karate Kid. It's,
I was going to say when I was reading Ralph Macchio.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually one of the Marvel guys.
Oh, okay.
Who did the comics. So just to clarify.
Okay, good catch.
And I hope this is a book that tells it. I hope it's like one of those really good behind the scenes documentary that we sometimes get on a DVD or Blu-ray, where people just don't, you have good and bads behind the scenes. And the bad one to me, that's when everybody going around patting each other's shoulder and saying, "Oh, I love working with you. You are so good." I want to hear everything about. I want to hear about mistakes, success, troublesome, hard work, everything.
Yep.
And I think that, and you can actually see that somewhat in who I interview on my site. And I actually often think that it's more interesting to hear about the people behind the scenes than the actors themselves. So if this book is something like that, I think it will be a very interesting book.
Yeah, I totally agree. And 40 years, man, that's pretty
that's
pretty
long
sobering.
Time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the really good thing would be if Josh Boone was involved in it and somehow gave us some news about the upcoming new version.
Yes, for sure. That would be awesome.
Yep.
All right.
And next up is actually a bunch of Dr. Sleep news.
Mm-hmm.
We have some casting. We have Dick Halloran and Wendy Torrance has been cast. And we have, Carl Lumbly will play Dick Halloran and Alex Soa, Wendy Torrance. And I have to admit that you sent me this news and I thought, wow, Wendy Torrance looks really young.
Yep.
And you reminded me then that she's actually only in the book in like flashbacks. So, and I didn't catch that really. So I think that will be good.
Mm-hmm.
Dick Halloran, well, you have the Dick Halloran from the Kubrick movie in mind, and he's really not looking like him, but you never know. I'm not familiar with these actors particularly. Are you?
Carl Lumbly, I know from, I believe it's Jennifer Garner. She had that show, Alias. I believe she played in that show. He was good. Alex Esso, she's obviously young, new actress, so don't know much about her at all. I think she has a horror movie out right now that might be worth catching. So if you check out her profile on IMDb, it might be worth catching that movie before you see Dr. Sleep. But it's good to see that these characters have been cast, which will lead into another story that we'll talk about in a second. But the other bit of casting news, and I don't know if we mentioned this, and I don't see it here, Hans, is that the actor from the last two Mission Impossible movies is playing Rose the Hat. I cannot remember her name off the top of my head. She's Swedish too.
Yeah, Rebecca Ferguson.
Yes, and I think that's fantastic casting. So to get her for that role, and now to get her to get Zach McClaren to play Crow Daddy, who if you've watched the recent reimagining of the Westworld series, he's featured pretty heavily in that second season as well, and he's good. So this is really looking to be a great cast for Dr. Sleep, and very excited about this casting news. Yeah,
and there's also a interview with Evan McGregor in which he talks about it and says that they will remain faithful to the book.
Yippee!
So that's great.
Yes.
We can't forget Kubrick's ending. Yeah. And he also says that they will start shooting in September, so we might just be weeks away from the actual shooting.
Yeah.
So
wow.
Hopefully we'll get to see some photos and updates online for that one. So we'll keep update.
Yeah, have to keep our expectations in check here, but both in front and behind the camera, this is really shaping up to be a very exciting project because the work that was done with Gerald's Game in 1922. And I even like his other movie, the director, his Hush, which you can see on Netflix, I believe, still, which is pretty good. So behind the camera, we know that it's rare to get a director that like a Darabont or a Rob Reiner that really seems to get Stephen King. So I'm really hoping that he's going to make these characters come to life. And this is just, it's really exciting. The cast and the director is just, got me very, very excited. I'm trying to keep my expectations down for this, but this could be something special for sure. Yeah,
we haven't seen any casting news for the little girl. Can't remember her name right now.
No.
We haven't seen any casting for her, at least. And also, I'm hoping that they will tone down a little bit, that this is a sequel to The Shining. Because I think that even though it's a sequel and it's the same character, I think it's quite different. So I think that people who really isn't that into horror movies will still enjoy this one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that actually those people could be scared away if it's a sequel to The Shining. So I think that maybe they should downplay that a little bit.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how the movie Dr. Sleep is taken in the major media outlets. Are they going to be confused about whether or not it's a direct sequel to the movie version or to the book version? Or are they going to try to explain it, or they're not even going to? That's something that's not even going to enter their minds. I've heard on other podcasts that where they mentioned Dr. Sleep that they're not certain whether or not it's a sequel to the movie or the book. So for the general movie-going fan, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I mean, you could do it either way. It could be changed quite easily not to have DeCalloran in the sequel, but for those of us who like the book, we definitely prefer to have him in the sequel. So in Dr. Sleep. So it doesn't make a big change to the story, but it's just nice to see that character again. And I just really didn't like the way his character's arc was handled in the Kubrick version at all. So yeah.
I think that probably it will be like everyone will be aware that this is a sequel to The Shining, and since they say that it will follow the book, it will probably not follow the movie. So people will probably be very confused if they actually take the time to see the first movie and find out that the character that died will be in the second movie. So I think that it will be a sequel, but it will be a confusing sequel to those who haven't actually read the books, just seen the movies.
I think people are going to say, didn't that, especially if they watch the Kubrick Shining before they go into theater, says that guy's dead. Like, what's go? But I think for the average moviegoer, it's not really going to be an issue. And I just think that those characters are only going to be in the movie for one or two scenes anyhow. So
yeah.
All right. So our next item is still with cinematic TV versions. We have news that Castle Rock has been renewed for a second season on Hulu. So that's always good news to keep some Stephen King TV stuff going. And we'll talk more about our impressions of the first season later on in this episode.
Yeah, I will only comment one thing on this, and that is that actually I think that Hulu is a good station to be at, because they seem to be able to take care of a show by just how they started with three episodes to get everybody involved in the show and the promotion and stuff like that. So I think whether you like the show or not, that's up to you. But I think a show that ends up on Hulu is ending up in a good place.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't like one season, then the next season will be with a totally different cast. So it's like American Horror Story, the anthology series. So each season it's going to be a different entity unto itself, which is always interesting.
Yep. Okay. Next up is actually some Pet Sematary news. And that is that I don't know if we're going to say remake or filming of the book, but the new movie is actually wrapping. So, and there was a picture posted on Instagram of John Lithgow as Judd Crandall, and he has a big white beard. He looks quite different from, I don't remember what his name was in the first movie.
Fred Gwynn.
But he looks like an old neighbor. So
looks like Santa Claus.
Yeah. But I mean, I love John Lithgow, so I'm not worried about that part. I think he's going to nail it. So no matter how he looks. So that's interesting. We just read today that they are going to include Zelda, that they have cast that part. Mm-hmm. And that's a scary part in the book in the first movie. So that's good news.
Yeah, definitely. On the home video front, we have two bits of news. The first one is that Mr. Mercedes season 1 is out on DVD, and that's great for because a lot of people who didn't have the streaming service where the series aired last season now finally have a chance to watch Mr. Mercedes, and it's timed obviously to coincide with the start of the second season, which the first episode is already aired, and we're going to talk about that later on in the podcast as well. Yeah,
and I know a lot of people are disappointed that it's not out on Blu-ray as well.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah, it's weird, but I think for this one, I think we should be happy that it's out on DVD, because I think this is the single one Stephen King adaptation that's been hardest to find for people.
Right.
I think it's the one that people have had the most trouble finding and seeing.
Yeah.
So I think we should be happy that it's out. Then of course Blu-ray would be nice, but hey, can't get it all.
Yeah.
Next up is that Maximum Overdrive is being released on Blu-ray in October, and I for one love this movie. I think it's a great movie. It's a bit cheesy, and it's maybe not the best actors in it, but I can't refuse it. So
yeah, same here.
Yeah, and I think there might be some nostalgia in it because I saw it when it was released back in the mid '80s.
Yeah,
and so I love it, and it's being released on Blu-ray, and it has a bunch of new extra material and stuff on it. So this is going to be, this is definitely one I am going to invest in. I usually doesn't buy, if I have the movie on DVD, I usually doesn't buy a Blu-ray, and often not Blu-rays from the US because I need to have a US Blu-ray player.
Oh, okay.
Which I actually have. I bought one when I was over in the US a couple of years ago. So I actually have that, but I only have it in my basement movie TV room. So it's a bit complicated, but this is definitely one that I'm going to be investing in.
All right. Yeah, it's got like, let's see here, one, two, at least two audio commentaries and a bunch of featurettes. It's too bad, and I know he doesn't like to do them, but since he directed this movie, it would have been nice to have gotten a Stephen King audio commentary for it as well. But yeah, he just doesn't do those things, so it's too bad because it would have been great to hear his thoughts about this. But yeah, I'm really excited about this, and to get it on Blu-ray will be a hoot. It's such a fun movie. Like you said, it's cheesy, but it's so over the top, and yet you just can't help but laugh at the stuff. So yeah. I'm really looking forward to getting this, and I'm really glad to see that this fortunately is being sold through Amazon, so you can get it and not have to pay like a ton of money for shipping as well. So that's kind of nice. Yeah.
Okay, that's it for the news for this time.
This is great. What's our job? We'd like drive around, pick up stiffs or what?
It's time for reviews from the Nightshift.
So let's head over for the reviews.
Alrighty. So we're talking Castle Rock first, right?
Yes.
All right. Episodes 4 through 7 of Castle Rock. And just a little bit of a recap. The first 3 episodes that we reviewed, I thought they were pretty good. That's obviously a lot of setup. The series looks great. The cast is good. And the location shooting really gives you a sense of Castle Rock as a place. So overall, I was intrigued with it and was looking forward to seeing some more episodes. What were your thoughts on the first 3, Hans?
Yeah, I really liked them. In my kind of show. Good casting, good story. Yeah, I really liked them, and I looked forward to continue seeing them.
Okay, so then we get the bunch of episodes, and that was The Box, Harvest, Filter, and I saw The Queen. So that's, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 episodes. So
yes.
What to say about the next 4 episodes? They're, at this point of the show, I've never really been scared of anything. I don't think there's much, there's some graphic imagery, but it's not it's presented in a way that's I ever found scary. I don't know if you ever had any scare moments, Hans.
No, I agree. I don't really think that it's a scary show.
Right.
It's more like a strange show.
Yes, it's kind of like a Twin Peaks, Kingdom Hospital vibe. If anybody's watched the Stephen King series based on that franchise, kind of reminds me of that.
And I like the fact that we know from the beginning that when we saw this episode, we didn't know that it was going to be a second season, but we know that if there ever were a second or a third season, each season would be its own show, and it will be a totally new one in the next season.
Right.
And that means that no one is safe.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that. I like the shows where and the creators know that we have these 10 episodes to tell our story, and we don't have to keep the main characters alive for like 4, 5, 6 seasons.
Right.
They can die in episode 5 or 4 or 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that in episode 4, where you have the guard who just out of the blue starts shooting his fellow guards and stuff like that, that came as a surprise for me. At the end, he was shot. So, and that is really the kind of show and the kind of plot line that I like, where something happens and all of a sudden someone you invested a bunch of time in and you really like, because I like that character. I thought it was interesting, and all of a sudden he's gone.
Yeah,
I like that kind of build up.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So I think we can safely say that we've got the flavor of the series established at this point. The 7 episodes in, we're at the point where we're waiting for questions to be answered. And that's where I'm getting a little concerned, because I feel like, in a way, the show sort of reminds me of Haven a little bit, because there's more than one character that has some sort of power. Like, you got Molly, who seems to be empathically tied to the main character. You've got Deaver, who's hearing this sound. And then you've got, as we find out on the episode 7, Ruth Deaver, who's been traveling through time, or basically time is not linear for her, so she keeps slipping back and forth through the past and the present and the future. Well, I don't know if she's gone to the future yet. No, I think it's all past for her.
I think so.
So problem for me is that anytime the show gets a little bit of steam up with one character, like, say, in episodes 3 through I want to say, or 4 through even 6, the Molly character takes over for a little bit, and you sort of get her backstory and what she's done, and the reveal that she's the one that killed Deaver's father because she was acting out what she thought Deaver wanted to happen. So you start to get into that, and then she basically disappears for the next couple of episodes, or she's hardly in it. And then you jump to like the Deaver's character, and he's hearing this noise, but then he wasn't in the last episode at all. So I'm finding it hard to connect to these characters, because the stories are so start and stop for each of them. Where, because in a Stephen King story, that's the thing that you really keeps you hooked, is the characters. And here, I just feel like they spread it around so much that but in a Haven episode, if you do that, it's resolved within that episode. Here, you're with a character for a while, and then all that momentum is lost when you jump to another character, and then you come back to another character. I think probably the one that was the toughest for me, and in the final episode that we've seen with the Queen, for Sissy Spacek's character, she just seemed like she had Alzheimer's for the first 7 episodes or 6 episodes. So she was a boring character, right? Like, it wasn't until this last episode that we saw that she was traveling through time. And then it's okay, but I wish I had known this a little earlier in the series. I think I'm just afraid that they're asking a lot of questions, and the answers that they're not giving us are going to be satisfactory. So I'm a little worried about that. And I remember talking to you about that one episode where Molly went to that cabin or motel to buy drugs, and you had that like court of kids.
Yeah.
But I've never seen them again. So like, what was the purpose of that? So I'm a little mixed on my feelings about the show. It's not really grabbing me to the level that I was hoping it was going to.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying, and I can't say I don't think the split between different characters are that disturbing. I think they kept it quite together up to the last episode, which was all focused on Ruth.
Mm-hmm.
But I think up till then, I didn't have any problems with it, and I actually thought that episode 7 was one of the best. So
I agree.
That didn't bother me, but it's interesting to say that you say she traveled to time, because I saw it as that she actually had Alzheimer's, and her mind was playing tricks on her more than she was actually traveling in time.
Okay.
So that's an interesting twist that you bring up there. So that will be very interesting to see where that
maybe just because
brings us.
Yeah, maybe I'm just conditioned because this is a show about the supernatural. So Alzheimer's seems like such a non-supernatural. And she was seeing herself, right? And acknowledging her own presence at times. So,
yeah,
something like it was kind of cool how they tied that dog in the suitcase. Like, I thought, why are they showing us this dog in the suitcase? And why would you bury a dog in a suitcase? I still don't understand that. Instead of just throwing it in the ground in the garbage bag, right? But so even though the bullets were in the suitcase, that was kind of cool. But I just kept on asking myself, why would you bury a dog in a suitcase? It doesn't make any sense to me. So that's, and when you start asking questions like, why am I asking this question? It's because I'm not invested in these characters enough. I don't really feel like I know enough about each of them yet, because of what I mentioned earlier, that they're jumping around. So like, this is supposed to be Deaver's story, but it doesn't feel like his story right now. And that the last episode he was in Filter with the deaf preacher or mute
yeah.
preacher or whatever. That seemed really Twin Peakish to me, that whole chamber that he went into and all that stuff. So I don't know. Maybe when I get to the last episode, it'll all sort of come together for me. But right now I'm impressed with the actors. I think the show looks great, but the writing has not hooked me yet.
Yeah. I actually think that the episode where he ends up in the RV with a soundproof room and that, I actually think that is this show's weakest point. I didn't really like those characters, and I thought that, as you say, it's really Twin Peakish, just that segment, and I don't think that really fits in with the rest.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that feels wrong. So that was a bit of a downer for me, actually. Yeah, I'm a bit worried about how they're gonna continue that path, actually. So, but other than that, I really like it, and I think I feel invested in the characters, so I don't have that problem. So, well, we'll see where it ends up.
Yeah, and of course, Scott Glenn's character, Sheriff, what's his last?
Alan Pangborn.
Pangborn.
Yeah.
I didn't really get why she thought, I guess she was being tracked down by the kid, and so she accidentally shoots him. But yeah, maybe that'll make more sense. So I assume that he is dead. And I think that last scene that we saw was him actually the first time that they came together, and that's when he started staying with her. Yeah, so because she got dressed up and all that, like she knew he was coming, right? So that's why I think she's actually flipping through time instead of having Alzheimer's. But maybe it's both. I don't know.
Yeah, I would prefer if she's actually flipping through times without being able to control it herself.
Right.
And she just ends up here and there and randomly going back and forth. So that's a really good idea, actually. I hope that is how the writers see it as well.
Yeah, and then you have some extraneous characters, like you have the boy from Chosen Jacobs, who was in, of course, the first It movie. But what's the purpose? Unless something happens to him in the last two episodes, it just doesn't really, like, he's there, but he's not really doing anything. And same with the girl, the help that Molly, Jackie Torrance, like, so she's related to Jack Torrance and Danny Torrance. But all she's been doing is like moving boxes. like she started out, like, in the beginning, the first couple of episodes, she was asking Deaver all these questions, and I thought, okay, she's going to be like some sort of a reporter, or she's writing a story or something. But that's totally petered out, and she's barely in the show now. So I'm really having trouble catching what the flow of this story is supposed to be. And I wish that they actually had just left, like, maybe Deaver having powers and everybody else just not having all these weird things. It's just kind of weird. I'm just trying to figure out maybe the story's about Castle Rock and the characters are just pieces in a game. I don't know, but it's not like a Stephen King story. Like, it really, if I didn't know this was a Stephen King related project, if you're watching it, you wouldn't really know that it was related to Stephen King in any way beyond the name of the town. And even if you have never read a Stephen King book, you still wouldn't make that connection. So
yeah. And that is basically the case as well, because it really has the town and the characters, and that's basically what it has connected to Stephen King. The other stuff is new. So yeah, it would be a big thing if they killed off Alan Pangborn. I mean, that's a character that's been in quite a lot of King books and stories, and he has a big history, and killing a character that big it's a big thing. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all know that King doesn't have to follow this if he ever decides to write a new book and include Alan. But
yeah. Well, right now I'm a little concerned. There's only 3 episodes left. I hope that they can tie this all together into a satisfying story. But where I'm sitting from right now, the questions outweigh the answers by far too much of a balance in my mind, and I'm worried that they're not going to be able to tie all this stuff together.
Yeah.
And I don't mind if there's some unanswered questions that maybe are the springboard for season 2. But right now, I'm just not invested in these characters. Like, I just don't know. Like with Molly, like, what's she gonna do now? Like, is like, what's going to happen to her character now? She's revealed her secret that she killed his father, Deaver's father. So like, are they romantically going to get involved or something like that? Or I don't know. Or is she going to sacrifice herself to save him? I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. But
yeah,
I definitely don't know where the show is going, which is always good, because most of the time when you watch a TV series, you'd always know where it's going, but really don't have a clue. So
that's good.
That is definitely good. But I just wish I was able to connect to at least one of the characters in some way, and that's not happened so far.
Yeah, and about finding answers in the end of the show, I really think that they need to close the season. As you said, it's okay to have a few loose ends that can start off the next season. But I mean, the main thing of the season has to be resolved, I think. When they have said that the next season is going to be a totally new one, you can't have too much connecting between the seasons, I think. But one thing that I wanted to ask you about was, what do you think about the Easter eggs in the show? Are there too many? Are they too obvious? Or are they doing a good job with them? What do you think?
I think they're doing a good job with them. They've been fairly subtle. Those things that have never really jumped or taken me out of the moment, which is the way I like to see those things implemented in the show. So I do appreciate them when you see the occasional nods. I think they've done a good job, but I don't think they've gone overboard with it at all.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like them. Maybe they came a bit too close with the whole Jackie Torrance thing.
Yeah, that was probably the most clumsy one.
Yeah, that was a little bit too close to being over the edge. But otherwise, I think they're doing a good job with it, and they are hidden. And if you know your King story, you will find them. But as you say, they aren't that obvious, so they bring you out of the stories. It's more like you get a smile on your face because you recognize Cujo or something like that, and that's it. So I think they are definitely doing a good job with that, I think.
Yep, for sure.
Yep.
All right, so that's the episode 4 to 7 review. I'd like to hear how the viewers are enjoying it and what your theories are about what's going to happen with the final 3 episodes of the season. So send those thoughts in, and we'll definitely address them on our next podcast.
Yes. Okay, and with that, we actually move over to another TV show, and this time it's Mr. Mercedes, who has just kicked off the second season with the first episode called Missed You. It's interesting because it's very well done. When the episode starts, it's like I think it starts at the fair where they beat Brady. You see them roll into the hospital and everything like that. And I got the feeling when I watched it that, wow, they are really following where season 1 ended. This is greatly done. And then a bit later, I rewatched the first season because my wife wanted to see it. So I saw it again. And I realized that it didn't, because in the first season, it ends with they coming to the hospital and you see Hodges getting well and released from the hospital and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but I still think that they did a good job with fooling your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because you think that it continues for where season 1 left off, and it does, but it's not like a clean cut thing. But yeah, I still say it continues where season 1 left off, with the clubbing of Brady and both him and Bill going to the hospital, and Bill recovers and gets released. Well, what did you think about it? You weren't that fond of the first season. Are you getting your hopes up for season 2, or?
I am. I really like this episode. It had much better pacing, even though it has 2 segments where they played like the really slow music that he puts on the record player. The first one I liked because it showed in a quick montage of Brady recovering from his heart attack or Hodges, sorry, and then Hodges visiting Brady in the hospital, and you could see it as time was going on. So that really worked well. And I thought that the new characters that they brought in, the doctor and his wife, I think that the doctor is really doing a great job, and his wife. I find them both interesting characters, and they're setting up the arc for the season. We got a glimpse of the nurse, who's having trouble sleeping, so we can assume that she's the one that's going to be taken over by Brady. So I really like that. And the Holly and Hodges moments were fantastic, which is something that we didn't get nearly enough of in the first season. I think that was missing. They cut that out for the first season, all their relationship stuff, quite a bit of it. I think we got more of their relationship in this one episode than we did in all of last season. So I was really happy with that. And I thought they really did a fantastic job with the first episode. I love the stuff in the graveyard and the cemetery, going down the ladder into the hospital. Man, I'll tell you, the grossest moment in the episode for me was, as a fellow Scotch drinker, is when he poured that Scotch into the chocolate ice cream. You just don't do that. Like I winced. Like I can watch them operating on Brady's head, no problem. But when he poured that Scotch into the ice cream, I was just like, ugh. What a waste of good Scotch.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I also think that this is a good starting point for season 2. And it will be interesting to see where they go with this. And I also like the Doctor. I really like the actor that plays him. He was in a show called Boardwalk Empire, which he was really good. I get a feeling that the wife, though, is a little bit overplayed sometimes. She comes on a little bit too strong in some scenes, I think. But it will be interesting to see where that lands. Yeah, and what I'm hoping, it's quite clear that they aren't going to use that much of Finders Keepers. But I would like to see them show a little bit more of how Bill and Holly started Finders Keepers, how they got it going and stuff like that. So I hope that will be, I don't know if we need flashbacks, but I hope some of the plot will take place in Finders Keepers, and that they will work with Finders Keepers to like find people and stuff like that. So that's one thing that I think will be interesting. I also think it will be interesting to see how the Brady part will be. I mean, he's in bed in a coma. How they are going to get that thing going.
Yeah.
That will be interesting to see. But I'm very positive for this season.
Yeah, they really hit the ground running with this episode, having the luxury of the first season to establish a lot of the characters. So I'm not familiar with the actor that's playing the Doctor. I didn't watch Boardwalk Empire, but what's his name? Is it Jack Houston?
Yeah.
But he doesn't look like a Jack Houston. He looks more, he sounds like he would have a different name because of his ethnic look, but he's really good. And I agree with you. I think his wife is overplayed a little bit. Tessa Ferrer, is she related to Miguel Ferrer? Is that her?
I have no idea.
Born, and she's an actress. It doesn't say. Daughter of Gabriel and Debbie Boone. Gabriel Ferrer and Debbie Boone. Oh, I always thought. She's the niece of Miguel Ferrer. Interesting. Okay. That's that last name. I thought Ferrer. Okay, that's interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, she's a little overplayed, but everybody else is really good. Am I confused about the Pete Dixon character who passed away? Was he not in The Outsider? Well, didn't he take that over and the investigating duties for Hodges in The Outsider? I thought that his former partner from the police department took his spot after he passed away. Is it a different character? I can't find it. I should actually just open up the Outsider book, but
yeah.
So if that's true, that's a break from canon, which is interesting. But I thought, and it's easily replaceable because that character never appears on page in the book except when Holly references him. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just a more upbeat episode in certain respects because Hodges has found himself after being retired, and this Finders Keepers has given him a purpose in life. So he just has an energy this season that, because of last season, obviously, of being retired and whatnot, losing his girlfriend. It's always a dark place, but here he's more upbeat and more on his game in that. So that's always good to see, and it's great to see Hodges in a good place. So
yeah.
Yeah, I really like the first episode of this season. I think that there's just an energy and a rhythm to the show that I'm a little worried that they're going to keep up that slow song device that they used. I think it worked good in this episode because it shows that montage of things. But if they're just going to have him like shuffling coffee cups around or something while he's listening to a sad song. That really drags down the pace for me, and I hope they get away from that. I know it's meant to reflect his character because he has that big record collection and he likes to listen to all those old things, but yeah, it's just too bad that they're not doing Finders Keepers. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I still want that, but it's not going to happen, so it's too bad.
Well,
but
this opens up for Finders Keeping actually being a movie. That part that isn't in, they could do a separate movie of it.
Maybe, yeah. That would be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if they're going to follow the end of Watch storyline. Is Hodges going to be alive at the end of this series, of this season?
Yeah.
We'll have to see.
Yeah, and they have always talked about they wanting to do the entire series. So maybe they think that this is the Finders Keeper season, and then there's a season 3 for End of Watch. So we don't know if it's going to end in this season.
Right.
So.
Yeah, because if it's doing well, they might want to continue with brand new material, right? Like a case of the season kind of storyline, which they could do for a couple of, as long as the actors are available to do it.
Yeah.
But obviously Brady won't be around after this season, or he shouldn't be. But we'll have to see how they play that out.
Yeah, it depends if they continue with End of Watch into season 3.
Yeah,
they could keep him for season 3 as well. But the problem with that is that, as far as I know, they have finished shooting this season 2, but they have not been renewed for season 3 yet. So basically, they don't know if there's going to be a third season. So are they working like there will be or there won't be? So we don't know that if they dare to gamble on getting a third season or if they're ending it here. So I guess we'll see that coming up. One character that we don't see in this episode is Jerome, who is probably away at college.
Right.
But I would be surprised if he isn't showing up later into the season.
Yes, as well as the co-worker of Brady from the electronics store, Luann?
Yeah, Lou Linklater.
Yeah, Linklater? Yeah.
Linklater, yeah.
I'm pretty sure I saw that she was signed up to do some episodes in season 2, so... I'm pretty sure I saw a picture of her visiting Brady in the hospital as well. So she'll probably be back, but please don't go back to the electronics store. Do not go back there.
Well, the manager is dead, so...
I'm sorry to hear that. But oh, God, that was so slow. Okay, so off to a great start.
Yes.
And just hoping that they can keep up the pace of the season. So... And more Holly and Brady stuff is always, or Holly and Hodges stuff is always good.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. And we're up to our last thing.
Last, and for Hans, probably least.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, probably least.
Yeah.
But it's hard to believe it's been over a year. August 4th, 2017 saw the premiere of a long-awaited adaptation of a Stephen King work from his magnus opus, and that was what, Hans?
The Dark Tower movie.
Idris Elba, Matthew McConaughey, and man, it's hard to believe something that we waited for so long is now behind us in the rearview mirror, and it's quickly receding on the horizon.
Yeah. So we did watch this one again.
Yep.
At home. And what did you come away with?
I think it just strengthened my opinion that I think in general people were too hard on the movie. I still think the problems of its being 90 minutes is ridiculous. And that sucked out all the character of the Dark Tower mythos. But I still stand by my belief that the cast that they had was good. I just think the Matthew McConaughey Man in Black character was a little overwritten, made too powerful. But I think the boy that played Jake, Tom Holland, not Tom Holland, I forget his last name, but he was good, and I had no problem with Idris Elba as Roland. But as we discussed when we reviewed the movie last year, is the focus was on the wrong character. Should have been on Roland instead of Jake.
Well, I actually watched it today,
Mm-hmm.
and my feeling when it ended was actually anger.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I felt so angry that this was the best they could do. I mean, they could have done so much better, and I don't like the plot. I don't like the casting. I don't like the way
Wow.
they. I think it was actually worse this time than when I saw it the first time.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the ending is, oh, I could barely watch it. And I think that one of the biggest problem I have, and I know that this is actually the way it is somewhat in the first book, but I really despised Roland. I couldn't like him when he first meets Jake. I think he's arrogant. I think he's and there's one scene when they are walking to the woods. Roland just disappears, and Jake is left alone, and some creatures or they see some creatures, and Roland sneaks up behind Jake's and say, "Shh, don't go walking away in the woods."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, "What? You left him, you dimwit?" And and Jake says the same thing. "What? You walked away from me." So I think that, and I know in the book as well, Roland is a bit hard on Jake, but I think that in the book you still root for Roland, and I don't think at least I don't do that here, and I think that is a big problem that he's too arrogant.
I hear what you're saying, but I think because you've read the books, you know what Roland becomes later on, so
yeah,
you forget the first time maybe when you read the book that he came across as a rather cold character.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, from that perspective, Idris Elba is playing the character the way you wanted him to be in a way. But I do get the frustration, anger aspect of seeing now what they filmed. That they went into this movie thinking that in 90 minutes that they could jump into the middle of the story and do an adequate job of covering the story is such a bad decision. Like if you're restricted to making a 90-minute movie, then you got to go with the first book, because there's, you only have like what, 2-3 sets maybe like that are of any real cost. Like you've got the town of Tull, you got maybe the underground railway station, and if depending on how many flashbacks you do, that's really it. It's all desert, and that you can film for $60 million. But to try what they did and do it in 90 minutes, it's just like, could you imagine if they made Lord of the Rings, the first movie, in 90 minutes long?
Yeah.
Like you would be like so lost and mad, and it, like the approach taken here, it really just seems like it was driven by finances rather than, and I mean, all movies are out to make money, obviously, but I think the budget restraints really hurt this movie, because this movie should have been 2.5 hours long to adequately cover jumping into the middle of the story. But that's a production decision. That's not what's on the screen. And when you're watching what's on the screen, you can only judge what the actors are doing based on what they're given to do. So that's why I don't have any problems with the cast here. I think they all did a really good job. I just think that they mishandled the Flag character, made him too powerful by, just waving fingers and telling somebody that they hate their mother and stuff like that. And they don't explain why his magic doesn't work on Roland, but it does on his father. Stuff like that, like that. It just doesn't hang together. And it's too bad, because there was that one scene where Roland is showing Jake reciting the Gunslinger's Creed, and they're holding the guns in that warehouse. That was the only moment that I really felt like it was capturing the spirit of the books to any degree. So, yeah, I still think people are too hard on it based on what there was. But I do agree with you that the frustration about what we finally got after waiting for so long it's like being promised a Cadillac and ending up with a Volkswagen. So
yeah. And about liking Roland, I totally agree with what you say. And I think that when it comes to the books, you, at least if you read all the books, you invest in it and you get to like him as you progress. But like here, they have like this 90 minutes, and even though they don't have to develop the character fully, because the plan was to do more movies, but they need to at least get you invested some in him. So I think that they could have started with him being this arrogant, but I didn't think that they twisted it around so that you finally could say, oh, okay, he's actually a good guy. I think I have a problem with that.
I think part of that might be because we've seen alternate scenes that didn't show up in the movie. And I think a lot of those scenes were with Roland as well, like the door and the ashes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think when they recut the film to make it work at the 90-minute running time, I think the Roland character is probably the one that suffered the most. And I think they really decided to focus on Jake because they thought that would be the easiest way for audiences to understand the movie was from his point of view. But in the process, as you said, they just didn't make Roland seem like a likable character.
No. And the Flag character, I think that he felt really flat. I mean, he had these powers and he could do magic, but he wasn't really scary. And I mean, this is a character that could kill you in just looking at you. So, I mean, if you compare him to, say, Darth Vader, who is a really, I mean, he's a really evil guy, and I don't feel that Flag really get this evilness in him. That he needs to be really, really evil, I think. And
yeah, I was thinking more like the approach that I wish they had taken with him was to make him seem more like a Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah,
because Lecter doesn't look scary, but once you spend like a minute or two with him, you're going, this dude is pretty terrifying. So,
yeah,
and that's what they needed to establish with
the
McConaughey's version of Flag, but they didn't go that direction. They tried to do it through these cheap tricks that he was pulling off all the time. So yeah.
Another thing that I find quite interesting is when Roland's father dies.
Mm-hmm.
They are in these woods, and Flag says, "Stop breathing," and just bam, he's dead.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I mean, I can keep my breath for at least a couple of minutes, but he just peel over and dies in like 15 seconds. I mean, he must either have very bad lungs or so that was also a bit, it didn't really feel believable.
Yeah, well, in 90 minutes, you got to cut out you can't wait a minute for him to die, right?
Yeah.
So they gave him 15 seconds, but that's another character that's totally wasted in that movie because it's like you meet him and he dies in the same scene. Like, how are you supposed to feel anything for a character?
Yeah.
Just because you don't know Roland yet. Like that shouldn't have been revealed until we got to know Roland, and maybe like in the next movie or even later down the line. So
yeah.
So yeah, it's the only thing that's still as positive is that Amazon Prime did pick up the rights to this Dark Tower books, and it is in development. We haven't heard much lately. Don't think it's going to move quickly.
No.
It looks like they're going to take their time with it. They've probably got other properties that they've bought that they've got higher priority on doing. But the showrunner from Walking Dead, Glenn, what's his name? Mazzara, he was writing in his treehouse apparently on the Dark Tower. So we'll have to see where that went. But I think somebody left Amazon Prime too. So I don't know if it was the creative development lady, but when stuff like that happens, then priorities shift as well. So we'll have to see.
Yeah.
But man, you just got to hope that it comes back. It deserves a better adaptation treatment than the one that I got for sure.
Yeah. The only thing that would be interesting with this particular movie is if they recut it and released it as it was planned from the beginning, because I think we're both pretty sure that this isn't the way that they planned the movie or probably even the way that they shot it. We know that they had a test screening and people didn't like it, and I read a version of the script where actually in the end where you see Roland shooting the cuffs that has Jake trapped in the chair, he actually shoots Jake instead. So maybe that was filmed, I don't know. And the only thing that could interest me with this one is if they actually cut that version and showed us what they really wanted to do. Or if someone who was at that test screening could tell us what they actually saw. Because I feel bad for Nicholas Arcel, yeah. Because on the Blu-ray there's also a documentary where Stephen King himself talks a little bit about how he come up with this Roland and Dark Tower series. And we hear from the director, who seems to be a really genuine King fan, and he said he's Danish, I think, and he says that King learned him English because he had to read the books in English because they weren't translated and stuff like that. And I recognize a lot of that from being in the neighbor country. But when you hear him talk, I get the feeling that this is not the movie he wanted to do, and probably not the movie he did, because I think that if he actually is the King fan that he says he is, he wouldn't accept the script that turned out to be this one. So I am very curious to what they actually wanted to do, and would love to see that.
Yeah, I would too, but considering how badly the movie did, there's no way they'll ever do another cut.
No.
Because there's no way they make their money back on it, and movie companies are not in the business of charity, so...
No, I think the only way we could find out is if someone who was at that test screening, I guess they signed a no reveal papers.
NDA.
Yeah, so if someone breaks that and actually tells us what they saw, I think that's the only way we could find out what they really wanted to do.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree with you too on Arcel. I think he just towed the company line. He wasn't going to speak out against the production company. Obviously, this was a big chance for him, and he wants to have a career. He wants to work on other projects. If he would have said anything negative, that pretty well would have been the end of his directing career. So, yeah, it's obvious something happened behind the scenes, and we were wondering ourselves when they were starting to promote the movie and they were starting to do that app on the phone and that, and then all of a sudden it just went like radio silent, and then people started saying, "Oh, something's going on here," and it turned out those whispers turned out to be true. So
yeah, and it was delayed, right? They pushed the release date and recut it, and
so it was pushed a month. A month is not a big deal, but it's too bad.
Yep,
too bad.
Okay, so if you have to compare it with now when you saw it compared to when you saw it the first time, was it better or worse?
I think I handled it better emotionally. I've calmed down from that perspective. So unlike you, I enjoyed it for what I knew was there, even though I knew what was there was not what we wanted. There's moments that work pretty good. There's other moments that don't. So I don't have any hate towards it. I'm just, sad and frustrated.
The reason for my anger is actually not. It's not what it became, it's what it not became, if that makes any sense. They really missed out on a good opportunity to do something good here. And I think, and it feels like, that this probably was the last time I saw this movie.
Okay.
But
that's interesting.
I
can understand that for sure.
Yeah.
But it's funny, like a movie like this that can frustrate us, and another movie like Maximum Overdrive, which I would never say is a good movie, but it just has that element of fun about it that can enjoy it for what it is. Whereas with The Dark Tower, even if it would have had that, but it doesn't, because it's pretty dour stuff, right? So yeah,
and I think for us who has been King fans for so long, and we've followed the books for so long, waited for this movie so long. I mean, I think a lot of the disappointment lays in that.
Yeah.
I think that if you're not a King fan, or if you're a King fan but hasn't read The Dark Tower, I don't think you're that angry with the movie. I think you're mostly confused because everything happens so fast and it's not totally logical everywhere. So I think much of our frustration lies in the time and the hope that we invested in this one, and was cheated of. So
yep. For sure. So that's where we are at. I'm curious again to see if any of our listeners have rewatched this movie and what their thoughts. Have they changed or stayed the same, gotten stronger negatively or positively? Feel free to send us some feedback, either through the SpeakPipe app, play your audio, or even if you just shoot us an email at Hans's Facebook group, that would be great.
Yeah. Okay, and that concludes this episode of the podcast.
That's right.
We're not sure what we're going to talk about the next time.
Well, it'll probably be the last couple of episodes of season 1 of Castle Rock.
Yeah, definitely. Probably some Mr. Mercedes as well.
Yeah, some more episodes of Mr. Mercedes. So we'll definitely have those two. And I'm sure there'll be a couple of surprises to add on to those.
Yeah, probably so. Until the next time.
Stay safe.
But
stay scared.
Yeah, you did a good job.
Hey, yeah. All right. Take care, everyone. The end. Pool.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Whoa. Jeez.
Oh, I kicked over my mic. Sorry.
Okay. I was afraid you're having a seizure or something.